everybody. I want to introduce you to an amazing human. Aren't you amazing, Dr. David Emanuel? You can say it.
That's what people say, but I don't say that about myself.
Yes, that was a good way to answer that. People can take note. I love it. So anyways, Dr. Emanuel is, well, I know him from some of his studies, but also he does a lot of teaching for the Center for Holy Land Studies, and we are ever so grateful for who he is and what his studies are. And speaking of his studies, I'll just go through a little bit of it first. Is that okay? I need the people to know.
Just a little bit. We don't have time to do everything, but you can do it.
It's a very long list, but I am going to start. You have a master's degree in computer science, and then you did that for a little while, used that degree, but then decided, hey, I want to know more things about the Bible.
Bible was cooler.
It is cooler. That's a great answer too, because of his brilliant mind. He then moved to Israel, and you lived there 11 years. Is that right?
That is absolutely right. 11 years to the day. We left on at the end of August, and we came back at the end of August to the day, exactly 11 years.
That's amazing, actually. So you were there quite a long time. You lived in Jerusalem, I believe.
Yes, and also Ma'ale Adumim.
Nice area.
About 5 minutes drive outside of Jerusalem, a small settlement.
Yeah, very nice. And what you studied there was a master's degree in Bible and Ancient Near East. Is that correct? And then a PhD in Hebrew Bible at Hebrew University. Right. Not a very easy school. So you do have a lot of intelligence about you, for which I'm thankful.
Once again, that's something I leave other people to say about myself rather than me.
This is how I can compliment Dr. Emanuel. So I will say, anytime I get to hear him speak, it's wonderful. I'm thankful. I think anyone who gets to sit under your teaching is blessed completely. And I'll say it because your wisdom and your knowledge of the Bible, but also you love the Lord. So combined, it's a really good mix.
Once again, that's something I let you to say, because I would never say that about myself. But that's okay.
It's what I see. So it's, that's pretty
good.
You also are teaching this semester at North Central University, our AG school in Minneapolis. So I think your students are probably fortunate and enjoying your course there too, or courses. Which ones are you teaching?
I'm teaching in this unit the Psalms, although they do 2 units per semester. So in the first part of the semester, I did Isaiah. Now I'm doing the Psalms. And then hopefully in the spring, I'll be at least advising a couple students or working with them.
Amazing. Yeah. So we're just thankful. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for your teaching with the center. And also we do have, by the way, this is getting to our Christmas series, okay? But we do have a new resource center that's coming out soon in a month or 2, but being posted on that sooner than later will be a couple of courses that Dr. Emanuel will be teaching. And those are going to be very amazing, exciting. And we're just thankful that you're doing that as well. So maybe we can get to the Magi, except I have one more thing to say. If any of you, I'm just embarrassing him to death right now. It's actually my great joy. Also, he loves McDonald's.
He hates McDonald's, which is
anyways, you're fine. So also if you'll understand by listening to him speak today, but if you ever want him to be able to, if you can catch him in his time to come to your church or your school to be able to speak to students or your lay people or pastors or whichever, I'm just going to say he would love to.
Yes, that's true. I would love to. Yes,
that is true. And we do have a speakers link on our website, and I'll link it on the email and where we post this so that if anyone wants to do that, they can go ahead and get a hold of us. And if you have the time, I'm sure he would show up. So I'm throwing all that there. Now, can we finally talk about the Magi?
Let's talk about the real issue at hand.
Okay, the real issue at hand is the Magi. It seems an appropriate time of the year to talk about it or not, and maybe we'll get into that. So when I was little, and I'm sure everybody else, and when there's, looking at paintings and pictures and everything, We always wonder how many of those Magi were there going along the way. But first, before we get to that, because there may not have only been three, just want you to tell us, who were the Magi, Dr. Emanuel?
I spoiler alert, this is probably going to ruin some
It's okay.
images of what you had, so I'm sorry about that. I apologize about that. Now this is my British nature coming through. I don't want to cause too much sorrow at this time of year. So as we begin this, we're going to begin with who the Magi were. And the first bit of bad news I want to bring to you is that they probably were not kings at all, even though they often are portrayed this way.
What
The
about
idea
the song?
that the
We
song,
yeah, go on.
like I say, we three kings. I know, like I say, I'm breaking stereotypes, and it hurts
Yep.
me to do so. But this context is demanding that I do so. So I apologize. I am, and for
It's
that,
what I'm asking of you. So please.
I'm sorry, and I apologize, and that won't be the last apology I make. So we're talking about three. They're probably not. They probably weren't kings at all. The idea of kings arises relatively late, maybe a couple of 100 years after the actual event that we begin to see that hearing that they were kings. There is actually a very, very clever kind of a literary link that we can see. If you link Psalm 72:10, which speaks about the kings of Tarshish and the kings of Sheba offering gifts. And if you can connect that with Isaiah 60 verse 6, which speaks of the kings of Sheba bringing gold and frankincense, then we can see that the idea of kings is in both passages. So some people say, these must have been kings. So we find the idea that they were kings stemming probably from that type of connection. And we know there is also there's a late Latin text from about the 6th century that specifies not only that they were kings, but also where they were from.
Okay, so
There's a lot there, sorry.
if they weren't kings, are we going to get into it later?
If they weren't kings, who were they?
Yeah.
Aha! I'm glad you asked.
That wasn't even planned.
Now, I actually wasn't there. However, we can begin to, at least if you think in terms of the around about 586 BC, 587 BC, the Israelites were finally kicked out of the land of Judah because of their disobedience, and they were sent away to the land of Babylon. And it was there that they were exiled for 70 years before they came back. They came back after the Persians defeated the Babylonians. And so we instantly have a place of contact between Persian society and also Babylonian and Jewish society right there. Very important to remember, about 10% of the Jews actually came back from captivity. 90% remained in Babylon / Persia. And so there's a very strong influence from a religious point of view, both Persia to development of Judaism, also Judaism to Persia. And so there is the strongest possibility, and something which I think sounds really, really plausible to me, though once again I say I was not there, that the term magos, the Greek magos, magoi, that we see used in Matthew is connected to the Persian word magu, which refers to a priest of the Zoroastrianist religion.
Okay.
That's a lot there. Yes, I know.
No, it's good. What you're doing is telling us there's a lot we all have to learn and dig into, that there's always something more and more and more and more. So I think
there is, and for that I apologize too.
It's not your fault.
I know, but I feel responsible for it because I'm the face of everything. I'm the face of that notion right now, so I have to apologize.
So the people who were showing up, even though you weren't there, if you had to take your best educated result of what you have studied, the people who are showing up to, and we'll talk about when they showed up in a little bit, but those people who showed up were from.
If I had to say, I would guess from Persia, somewhere from around Persia.
Okay.
And they would have been priests who read the stars, who would have been aware of, and I'll say this because regarding the Zoroastrianist religion as well, they were aware of a savior of the world. They were aware of some big divine type figure to come into the world to set things right as well.
Okay.
So whether that leaked from Judaism or the developed themselves, I don't know. But were I a betting man, which of course I'm not, because that's poor use of resources, but were I a betting man, I would lean towards saying that these were individuals from Persia.
Okay, thank you. First, oh my goodness, wow, from you. Okay, so next question I'll frame around, and we'll talk about the gifts later, but gold, frankincense, and myrrh are, you know, what we talk about, sing about, read about. Which always then made people think, well, there must be only 3 of those people who showed up. So can you tell me, because even though you weren't there, were there 3 Magi? Do you think it was only 3 people on a camel or camels that showed up to this event?
Now, and I'm glad, and I'll reaffirm the fact that I was not there. However, the likelihood of there being 3 individuals is incredibly unlikely, hugely unlikely. And again, I would bet, were I a betting man, which of course I'm not, but I would bet my house and my car that there weren't 3 individuals.
Yeah.
And I come to that conclusion really because what they were carrying, the gifts that they were carrying, had great value to them. And it wasn't a small purse of gold and a small purse of frankincense and myrrh at all. It would have been a larger quantity. It would have been something that you would have been ready to offer a king to say, look, this is a sign of our riches, maybe a sign of what we represent, that we want to get involved with you. So it would have been something large. And to make that distance from Persia to Jerusalem and on to Bethlehem with that much of value, it's unlikely that 3 people are doing this. So we're going to have a much larger group of people coming to present these gifts, because you're going to need bodyguards and soldiers and everything else to keep you protected. And we see as well, if you would just let me go one little bit further, we see as well when they get to Jerusalem, if it was 3 individuals, well, 3 individuals could sneak into the back door of Jerusalem. Herod's never going to know about it. But the fact that you have a large group of people going there, it's a commotion, and that's when it gets Herod's attention. He says, hey, what's going on here? Bring these guys to me. Let's sit down.
That's a good point. I don't know if people have thought of that. I mean, you did, so good job. That's a good point.
I was working on that all night. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just came up with that one. No, it is a good point when you just think about it logically. Like, I feel like sometimes if we just look at the story logically, it makes so much sense that there's going to be a big caravan,
right,
with protection, and it's not a short little distance. So they're traveling for quite some time. Plus, they'll need the food, all that they need to go along the way. And then, right. Yeah, you're right. Yes. People could sneak in, but not a caravan of people.
Right. Yeah. And if you could just let me squeak in. Thank you. Just let me squeak in as well. If you begin to think of a similar type of situation when Ezra and Nehemiah are returning from Israel, I think we're gonna find this in I think it's in the book of Nehemiah. When they return from Babylon to Israel, one of the big issues is the question of protection. And the king offers them protection, and they say, no, because our Lord will be with us. But they were saying it like this because they weren't sure. But that just goes to show that when you are traveling this distance, protection is definitely needed.
Yeah, thank you. Look how much we've learned already.
Sorry, rabbit hole. Sorry.
No, the rabbit holes are the best part, I think. I love when that starts to happen. It's fun on a trip too, right? You start
Yes.
flying everywhere. It's wonderful.
Yes. It's better on a trip. Yeah, I'm more relaxed on a trip.
Right. Yeah, okay, fine. It's wonderful. Okay, another one of my favorite songs growing up, because I would like be this little girl lying down and looking out my window at night at the star, and oh, the star that they must be following. And then, tears would come in my eyes, and every song about it and all of it. I really want to hear about the star. So can you please tell
Um,
me, what star did they follow?
what star? Which one was it? And how can we get hold of
What
one
did it look
today?
like? Talk to
What
me.
did it look like? Okay, it was bright.
Yeah,
Uh,
imagine.
yeah. Well, you got to start from somewhere. Again, I'm not criticizing getting doctrine from songs and stuff like that. So please remember
Exactly.
that as I speak, please
Yeah.
remember that. Present a star. First of all, stars, they obviously have this really huge, in just about every culture, they have this huge predictive type power. People look up in the stars. We see the stars influencing writings from Qumran, and that helps determine people's future and characteristics just by looking at the stars. So everywhere has this idea of even Jews had this idea of the predictive power of stars. So when we're talking about the stars that these individuals follow, I wasn't there. However, there are various ideas about it being certain comets, or whether it was a supernova or a conjunction of the planets. One of my favorite theories was that I think it was May 27th, 7 BC, there was a conjunction of planets in which Jupiter came close to Saturn, and this all happened within the constellation of Pisces, which represents the Jewish people, and all of this type of stuff. And it's a wonderful idea. I don't put too much stock in this type of thing, simply because if you look at the stars, they may be able to get you in kind of the general direction of Israel. But when it comes to directing you specifically to Bethlehem and to around about a house, that's really, really difficult to imagine, because they are quite far off. So we have to look at something else maybe that we could perhaps connect to a star. And so one of the ideas which I kind of like, I never witnessed it, but the ideas that I kind of like is that the association of stars representing angels. And so they were led by an angel, a bright angel, which could bring them exactly where they needed to be. And here I would lean obviously on the text of Job 38, verse 7, where it speaks about the morning stars singing together in parallel with the sons of God, which are normally considered to be angels. So we're dealing with the idea of stars being associated with angels. We see this as well in the book of Revelation 1, 16, 20, 21. I think you're going to see this connection between stars and angels. So it would have been something bright, something like a star, but whether it was an actual star as we look up so far away, I would personally doubt that.
Mm-hmm. That is brilliant. And you can say whatever you want, but I mean that was good. I really liked it.
But I wasn't there. Please don't forget, I wasn't there. So I'm just saying, as I imagine things, how things could have been possible. So I don't get the idea of a star in the heavens leading people over even a village of Bethlehem. But
Yeah,
if we like that, then
that's what you need.
if it makes a nice Christmas card, then then put it on.
I mean, I did just paint that, so, but yeah, I like the angels. Have to go change that part. Okay, so when people put up their nativities at home, you have animals, baby Jesus, Joseph and Mary, sometimes other people, because depends how big your nativity is, and then the wise men. So my question's going to be, were they there in 5 seconds? How should they really be in our nativities? Now, I'm not saying everybody needs to go change their nativities, just maybe
Get rid
every
of the
two,
wise men from our nativities. Just take them out.
take them
Let's
out.
just have the cow and the lamb.
I know, I just have them show up every 2 years.
Were they were they there?
Yeah.
I wasn't there. Okay, so I never saw. I'm not an eyewitness account. However, they certainly weren't there at the birth, were they? Because this is
Right.
actually a couple of years
Mhm.
after Jesus is born that we actually find any sort of hint of this sort of thing happening. So they certainly weren't there at the birth. Were they in the vicinity? This is the type of thing. Well, why not? How many were there? I don't know. Again, if it's a large entourage, if you've ever been to Bethlehem and you see a large entourage going there, then that's going to probably double the size of the village.
Yes.
So did they all actually make it there? I don't know. But that, the story says that they visited. So at least for the time being, we can say that they visited, but it's very difficult to, as we read biblical texts, and I'm sorry, small rabbit trail, but as we read biblical texts, it's really important to try and visualize how this actually happened rather than just blurring that. And I understand that's where all the dead bodies lie. That's when all the problems with the text come up, when you start imagining how did it actually happen when you see these places. And so the question of the wise men getting actually to Bethlehem, and again, the question of how did they find the right house, and an angel led them to the door and led them to the cave or whatever it was, I don't know. It's difficult to imagine. Again, it would have been a big deal to have a huge flood of people coming to Bethlehem, doubling in size. Where did they sleep? What did they eat? How long were they there for? All of these types of questions, which I think there's a degree of gray area around that.
Okay, that's fair.
Sorry, I went on too long.
No, I like it. So we can at least, this is the point. We can at least pretty logically assume they didn't show up that night. And most people would probably say they showed up several years after.
Yes,
And
I think that's a fair assumption.
And some of that is in accordance with the killing of the innocents, would you say? How
yes,
it was 2 or under?
Right, 2 years or under, which which is
say it.
It's not, I know it's not the purview, but the killing of the children in Bethlehem is, I think, a likelihood, because what we know of Herod's character and his paranoia.
Yeah.
But I would say that Bethlehem was not at that time a huge metropolis.
Right.
And so it would not necessarily have been, and there's some amazing Renaissance images of thousands of babies being slaughtered in the streets.
Yeah.
I don't think that would have been quite the picture that we saw, but that was a couple of years afterwards.
Okay, thank you. But people can still have the wooden figurines out if they want to, but just so they know they weren't there.
At the time of the birth, yes. So
I said it, yeah.
Yeah. So what I suggest you do is bring your little figures a day after Christmas or a couple of days after Christmas. Bring them out and put them out then, or create a small distance between your manger scene and the figures to give the impression that the Magi arrive after the birth, just to kind of create that correct image.
Yes, perfect. Thank you, sir.
That's okay. I'm sorry.
So can we talk about the wise men in Matthew? Just talk to me about the wise men in Matthew. What is their relevance in the book of Matthew?
Yeah. In the book of Matthew, Matthew has this this inclination. His big thing is this idea of the fulfillment of Scripture, which is this idea of looking at the Old Testament text and using everything he can find to show that what he's mentioning in his gospel fulfills what was written in the Old Testament text. And as a result of that, we find that he mentions just him, because we don't find the same story being written in the Lucan account. But because of Matthew's inclination to do that, we find him bringing this story to light so that he could explain clearly that this is indeed, and I think even though I'm not quite sure he actually mentions it, but this is again a fulfillment of what is written in the book of Isaiah chapter 60, verse 6, if I'm not too mistaken, which speaks of the kings of the world, the kings of the nations bringing gold and frankincense. And Matthew's kind of like saying, haha, you see, it's happening right here, even as Isaiah predicted. So this is part of his program of fulfillment. And if I would say as well, if you would just give me a little bit of leeway to mention as well, the relevance of the star also, I think, comes into Matthew's thinking, because we have this text going back in Numbers about the Messiah being this star, and we find the idea of the star being used by Shimon Bar Kochva afterwards to indicate some sort of messianic quality about him. So I don't know if Matthew's bringing that in as well. It's all part of this bigger program of the fulfillment of Scripture.
Yeah, thank you. You're teaching us a lot. I really appreciate
rabbit
it.
trails. Sorry, rabbit trails.
Again, I like the rabbit trails. So gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
Yeah, about that.
Why those? What about it?
That?
Yes.
What about those?
What about it?
3 gifts. Gold. Gold, obviously, Isaiah 66. That's where it comes from. The young camels of Midan and Ephah, all those from Sheba will come. They will bring gold and frankincense. Those are the only 2 mentioned in Isaiah 66. So the gold was brought, I think, definitely in fulfillment of this scripture. But also you've got to think that gold was a universal currency. Everybody dealt in gold. And when you think in terms of the broader narrative, the gold would have been really important, because the next stop for the Holy Family was going to be Egypt. And what are they going to spend? You can't just go into Egypt and say, hey, I'm going to set up my business. They need something to live off. So the gold would have been an instant usage that they have there. We come to frankincense, which is another one of these smellies that was particularly associated with the incense of the tabernacle and of the temple. And so this is reading into Matthew and the way, trying to get into his mind and how his mind works. This is perhaps symbolic of the priestly function of Jesus. This is whom he was going to be. Now, some can relate the gold to being that of a king, and now we have that of a priest. And so we've got elements of Jesus's character perhaps being foretold or foreshadowed in these 2 gifts. That brings us on to myrrh. What about myrrh? We don't have myrrh occurring in Isaiah 66. So the big question is, why would you chuck that in as one of the gifts? Well, myrrh, we know it's another smelly that they used particularly concerning death and burial. And we find it in John 10:39, I think it is, when Jesus' burial, and there is a huge amount of myrrh comes onto the scene again, which is used to you embalm, not embalm, sorry, I never said embalm. I take that back. Not embalm.
I'm leaving it in.
I never said balm. I never said embalm. Please, I'm going to take that back. I deny that. But to cover the body with, to prevent it smelling too bad, to overcome the initial stench and decay. And so what we see, and I really like this, what Matthew has done there, what we see is a foreshadowing of Jesus's death. And this idea, rabbit trail, this idea we find also in Renaissance art concerning the birth of Jesus, because the birth of Jesus is very often placed in a cave, not just because that's probably where it was, but because the cave represents both the birthplace and it foreshadows the tomb to which he would die as well. So this connection between birth and death we find in one image, I think, is captured beautifully with the presentation of myrrh by the wise men.
Wow.
Rabbit trail, sorry.
There you go. Love it. Thank you. I I really like how you're diving into some of the character of Matthew. And, sometimes when we're reading through our biblical text, we don't always take into account the people that wrote it and their personalities and their thought process. We know that the Lord is involved in this process, but he allowed them there because they're all very different from one another.
Yes.
And you've uncovered a lot for us already as far as being able to dive into the text and understanding so much more. So I appreciate it. Good job.
That's a crucial point. Thank you very much. No, very crucial point. It's if you just taking if a car accident occurred in front of my house and I had to report about it and my neighbor had to report about it and the driver had to report about it and the person got hurt had to report about it, the stories would be different. Different things would be highlighted, and it's the same sort of thing that we see within the gospel accounts.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I think when we do our trips, our programs, and when your teaching comes out on our resource center as well, and everywhere else you're teaching, you bring all of that into what you're doing, which gives as full a picture, I think, as we can. And we're always learning, aren't we? So always growing,
Definitely.
always learning, never stopping. So I love
Yes.
it.
And that includes me as well. Always learning.
Yeah,
I'm
I
just gonna say,
know.
it includes me as well.
Yeah, that's what I love. You just never stop. You never stop learning. I'm gonna ask you my last question, and I don't mind a million rabbit trails on it. But I do want to thank you for how far you've brought us this far. And listen, everyone who's listening to this, he's pretty great, isn't he? I was right. So you don't have to say anything, Dr. Emanuel. Shh. But he is amazing. So again, I just say if you are wanting to sit under some of his teaching, I think you'd be greatly blessed. And also, he kind of has a great personality to go with it. And he loves McDonald's gift cards. I can put his address in. So, yeah, I am going to ask you my last question, but then anything, it's Christmas almost, dude. Anything that you want to add in beyond this, I would love it so much. But as you've brought us through all of this and talked about the Magi, which I think you could probably do for quite a long time. So thank you for making it succinct for everyone. Can you just tell us and give us some takeaways on what we can learn from these people who came from far away, showed up?
Strangers.
Yeah. What can we learn?
What can you learn from strangers from Persia?
Yep.
Which is basically what you're saying. Well, there's the old adage I bring up. 2,000 years ago, wise men sought Jesus. Today, they still do. And this is the real, I think, relevance and the significance of Christmas, the significance of this time of year. It's not about the birth taking place. It's not about God. It's not just about God becoming a man, leaving the warmth of heaven, heavenly choirs, endless supplies of food, marvelous views, brilliant company, and he leaves all of that to adopt, an armpit and an ear hole and stuff like that and be a human being. It's not that he did all of that and he sacrificed all that he had to be that. The question is, what does that demand of us? Yeah. And are we seeking him out? Are we looking for him? And are we willing to make him a part of our lives? Because once the wise men encountered Jesus, they never forgot about him. They would have taken that knowledge and their experience of him back with them. So this is really the big challenge for us. What do we do with the birth of this child? Do we seek him out to invite him to being part of our lives, to partner with him, to enter into a, dare I even say, some kind of a covenant with him, which would be the point of the wise men's visit? Or do we just find him and then move on? Or do we just find him once and not think about him and saying, okay, I found him and that's it? The question is, after finding him, what do we do with it? Do we make him a part of our lives? And this is the big, big issue. It's not a one-off. It's a question of constantly having him as part of our life. And this is something which the wise men would have done. And this is the challenge for us to do as well today.
We'll just drop the mic there.
Challenge of the wise men.
Yeah, I love that. That should probably be spoken of a little more in some churches. I think some people might take that one from you.
Yeah.
And run with it.
No, okay, I can't take it back. I can't take it back. No, sorry. Okay,
it's really good.
It's been said.
That's exactly it at the end of it all, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah. It's the invitation and the partnering with Jesus. That's the big thing.
Yeah. Well, all I can say is thank you. I think
thank you.
This actually, and I know you already, but this has been really nice. It's like been a great joy to hear you talk about all of this, and especially right now. And you gave us some takeaways that I think we're responsible to respond to.
Can I just say, she said takeaways. She didn't mean McDonald's. She meant things you could take from my message. I'm sorry, Amy, I'm sorry.
I'm done. So that is what I meant.
Okay, I'm sorry. You were
milkshake.
I'm sorry, I thought you had McDonald's on the brain, so I'm
mixing dairy and meat. I mean,
yes.
you see where my rabbit holes just went? They went kosher. I don't even know what to say. So.
I'm just clarifying.
No, I love it, and that is something now I can't forget. So when we're sitting and we're talking about the Magi and who they were, how they behaved, but what they represent to us, it's really important. So thank you so much. And
thank you for the opportunity.
And you're amazing. And be looking for your McDonald's gift cards. And again, if anyone wants to interact with Dr. Emanuel or have him come and talk, or if you have questions, I'm sure I can throw them his way too. I think he'd be okay with it. Can you tell us your website a minute?
Yes, I can. I just thought, I wish I'd have an opportunity to tell them. The website is ezra710.com, EZRA710.com.
Yeah.
So it's ezra710.com. You spell that out in words. Yeah. And that's how you get there.
And what is on your website?
At the moment, I have links to some teachings that I do, some sermons that I preach. I have I'm building up a gallery of sites from Israel, sites from the Holy Land,
really good,
with some small captions and explanations. So I'm working on developing that aspect as well. And I'm also currently working on a list of useful web tools for biblical studies that are out there as well. That's another area. And I'm also working on another section, a new section, which is just going to be resources, handouts that I use when I go out on tour, when I take people to Israel or to Turkey. I normally have a set of what I call slides, but they're just color pictures, which I like to make available to people afterwards as well.
Thank you.
That's in a nutshell.
People have a lot of questions, more and more, and we love it. We love questions.
That's fine.
So, yeah, ezra710.com. Okay, and I'll link that as well. But I just want to say thank you. You're amazing. Can't wait to get back in one of the biblical countries with you sometime soon.
You're the amazing one, Amy, for setting this up. Thank you.
Oh, love it. Okay, I will talk to you soon, and we so appreciate you.
Thank you.